Good morning and welcome to Behind the Gavel with Jason. Today we're going to talk to Colleen Lynch from No Other Book Like Us. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns, go ahead and post them below. Let us know where you're watching from. That'd be awesome. We'd love to know where our viewers are coming to us from. But I'm really super excited to bring in Colleen Lynch from No Other Book Like Us out in Connecticut. Colleen, how are you this morning?
I am great, and it's no other book like this.
Oh, what did I say?
Us.
Oh, no other book like this. Yeah, no other book
like
like us doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
It's very inclusive, like no other book like us. I like it. But yeah, I'm coming from Connecticut, so definitely far away from you guys. I got the CST and the EST wrong today.
Yeah, I have a guest on from Italy every once in a while. We have to really make sure that we're dialed into the time.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah, she comes on and joins us. She joins us, and then she goes up to dinner with friends in Italy, which is awesome for her.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
For those of you who don't know who Colleen is, and you're excused if you don't, Colleen Lynch started No Other Book Like Us about 6 years ago in 2015. Started buying and selling books as a means to. She was a librarian. She has a Master of Library and Information Science from Simmons University, has her bachelor's from University of Connecticut. She was a full-time librarian, loves books, obviously. I don't know a librarian that doesn't, but actually likes books, the actual books, and old books and antique books. And because of that, she started buying and selling and just kind of grew that business into now she's going to open up a brick and mortar bookstore in Groton, Connecticut, which is not that far from Mystic. And I saw this come up the other day in one of the book groups I'm in. I was like, I have to talk to this woman about what she's doing. And you're only 30 years old. And so
I know. I always thought like maybe I would expand or do something like this. Maybe when I was like married and like in my 40s or 50s, and like eventually if I had time to like sort of change my career track. But I always thought I would be a librarian, and I got hired as the business librarian partly because I was doing this, and sort of took a circuitous route to doing this now instead of library science. So
very cool. So why don't you tell our followers a little bit about yourself and kind of what got you involved and what ingrained that passion for books?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm a writer. So basically I'm a huge reader because of being a writer. And my favorite author is Robert Penn Warren, and he was the first poet laureate. And I love Yeats. I love all these old writers. And that was kind of spawned by, school, reading for school. I was always the one that actually enjoyed what the school would let us read, except Grapes of Wrath. I couldn't get into that one. But I just found older writing sort of transported me a little bit more than modern, like YA when I was a teenager and that kind of stuff. I do like fantasy, love Neil Gaiman and that kind of thing. I read 3 books at once. Usually it's like nonfiction, like a self-help book if I'm feeling that day that I want to read that. One from like the 1800s, like some obscure romance or mystery or something that people don't even know who the author is anymore. And I have to be very careful with those books when I read them. And then one modern fiction usually. But I do have like a rule where I collect books, but it has to be a book that I've read or plan on reading. So I sort of started with collecting books as a librarian when I was studying in Boston. I worked part-time at Wellesley Public Library, and we would get donations all the time. Libraries get donations of books. When people die, they don't know what to do with their parents' books. They aren't interested in books. They're like, oh, let me go to the library and donate, and then the library has a sale. So I found that people knew through the library that I really liked old books and beautiful books. And they'd be like, oh, this one's really old. It's not going to sell in the sale. Like, here, Colleen, look at these books. So I started collecting and ran out of room really fast and made a decision one day. You know what? Maybe I should get rid of some of these books that I'm not going to read, like these beautiful sets of like British history, like volumes 1 through 13. And they're just gorgeous with ribbed binding and like marbled end papers. And I'm like, oh, these are just going to sit on my shelf. Like someone could actually enjoy these more than I could. So I started on Etsy, and that first month I made about $1,000 from free books. And that was
Nice.
going to me. And I was like, wait a second, this might be a thing that I could continue doing. And Etsy eventually in 2017 changed to sort of feature more handmade things versus antiques and vintage things. So I sort of had a great sales going, like 20 books a month, like over 1,500, making, like I was living part-time on that and working part-time as a librarian. And then they changed their algorithms and it just went washed away. So I had to sort of build up my following on social media and make my own website and that kind of thing. And then I got my first full-time library job being the business librarian and outreach librarians for social media at New Haven Free Public Library, based on sort of my foray into selling books. So it was kind of cool because I learned business and small business and helped people for years, 3 years, fulfill their dreams and start their businesses. And now I'm kind of doing it for myself.
That's very cool. Like Sue said here, and thanks Sue and Linda and others for watching. It is so exciting. And I'm excited about many different aspects of this conversation. I love books. I mean, if I could, I want to take pictures of my library for my business.
Yeah.
It's close to 1,000 volumes
Yeah.
of different antique reference books that I have bought, kept, and accumulated over the years.
That's
And my wife and I have books stacked all over the house. Our boys will read a little bit, but
like a stack, like to show you guys all of my like most beautiful books. I have like, if I was on my phone, I would show you. I have so many bookshelves in this apartment, and I'm moving soon, so it's going to be kind of a nightmare moving all these books.
yeah, they're heavy.
Yeah,
I know. I've moved boxes of books many times.
Yeah.
So speaking of moving soon, you have a lot of stuff going on in your world. You're moving soon. You're buying a car. You're buying a business.
Yeah.
And then you just have like life. So
yep.
Let's talk a little bit about the business, the book business you're buying. I talked a little bit about it, so I know, but tell the thumbnail version of what you're buying and what that's going to look like for you once you get established in that space.
So we were struggling, me and my dad, who's a businessman and owns some small businesses. So, as the business librarian, I butt heads with him because he's like, you don't know anything. And I'm like, you don't know anything. And I know that. And I'm trying to prove myself. But we talk a lot, and he's helping me sort of like navigate this too. And we decided to do an asset sale instead of a business sale. So I'm not going to be buying this book business and changing the name. I will be buying everything this book business owns and this bookstore owns. Then I will be leasing the same space. Obviously, I'm not moving everything, and I will run out the lease that this woman has, and then hopefully extend if the bookstore is successful. And it'll be, changing signs, changing names, having a grand opening, changing the inside, and making it. My business plan is very focused on making it a destination, where right now it's kind of like a maze of just books and books and books, and it's hard to find the gems. And I think that my expertise is being able to source those books and book hunt for people. I have people reach out to me all the time on Instagram asking, like, can you find me a really old James Fenimore Cooper? And I'm like, oh, I already have one. Or, like I have a whole set, or I know exactly where to go or who to contact for that. So I'm sort of joining the two revenue streams. I'm going to be learning the retail business and how to move books daily and sort of lower priced books, and then continue selling online. And what's great is that this business has been all in my free time lately because of my full-time job. So now doing this full-time, I'll have, the stable revenue stream of customers, hopefully. And then I'll be able to buy time in between customers to really list the books and market them, the ones that are more expensive online.
So when somebody like Sue says she's looking for a vintage leather-bound Frankenstein, that is something that you would help with.
Yes, and what's really funny? Frankenstein is a really hard one because I love Frankenstein, and I've looked for myself. And the first edition, I want to say, maybe I'm thinking of Dracula, was not leather bound. And usually these first editions are leather bound. So I'm wondering if maybe Frankenstein time period wise was leather bound. I'll have to look at the first editions, but they're so hard to source. And I do know where to find them, but they're very expensive. So you'd have to let me know what your budget is, but I absolutely can help you with that.
So let's talk about that real quick. One of the things I've talked about is the values of books. And you talked about first edition, leather bound. And I know what those things are because we sell estates and we get books somewhat regularly. But if somebody's just looking for a book, they don't need to have a first edition. They just want to have a good antique copy. Tell me some of the differences. What makes a book valuable? What should collectors look for? What should readers look for? Because it's a different mindset, right?
Absolutely. So I'm very staunch about hardcover versus paperback. I think paperback is more modern and very cool vintage paperbacks. I actually have one right here. Do exist. I have Pinocchio and Peter Pan. Whoop, and they're called pocket editions, and they always usually have really cool vintage 50s art or something. But outside of that, anything antique, I'm sure you know, is like 2000 and previous at this point, which is crazy because
2000, anything pre-2000.
That's what they say on Etsy. They say if it's before 2000, you can list it as an antique, which is crazy to me. But if a book is in the 90s and came out in the 80s, that kind of thing, I mean, you're going to find very few first editions that are really quality. I try and source from the 50s and previous. A lot of 1800s, late 1800s are easier to find than mid 1800s and earlier, are much more expensive. But I do find online, and I source from library sales, estate sales, all over the Northeast. There's just little bookstores, little pockets of places. One of my favorite ones is Whitlock's Book Barn in somewhere around here, Hamden maybe, and in the middle of the woods. It's just this barn in the middle of the woods, and it's got like so many gems, and this person really knows how to find them. And if you know this place exists, which is hard to know if they don't have like an online presence, you really luck out every time you go there. So it's really about sourcing online if I know what I'm looking for. And if I don't know what I'm looking for and I'm just trying to find like beautiful binding or something like ribbed binding is really popular, where it has the lines and they come out on the spine.
Oh, sure.
Any gold detail, obviously. Beautiful illustrated books is something that I really find fascinating usually, and collect myself. So illustrations, you know, I like a lot of UK editions too, because you know they're not as easy to find. But a lot of times the cover is what people will go for, and they'll pick up a beautiful book even if they don't know the author because it's beautiful, and they'll look through and they'll say, oh, this is a history book, I like English history, maybe I'll get this. Or, oh, this is a fictional mystery book from, you know, the late 1800s, like that's amazing, and I don't know who this author is, but you know, I want to own this on my shelf, and maybe we'll read it. Hopefully we'll read it.
Right. You talked about a couple of things I want to touch back on. You said 19th century books from the 1800s. Late 19th century is easier to find than earlier. Tell me what the kind of is the break point as far as when they go from being, and my assumption is the production quality and the production facilities became much more advanced and much more Henry Fordized. Like there's a more of a
absolutely. Book printing history is phenomenal, and I know a lot of there's the Book Barn in Niantic, and they have a whole genre section, which I'm definitely going to copy their idea, of books on books. And it's book collectors love books on printing history, libraries, book history, that kind of thing. I have books that I'm putting in a catalog. I should say I'm making a 4-part catalog. Part 1 already came out that I'm emailing to people if they reach out to me and they're interested, of my rarest books, because I'm trying to fundraise right now. And a couple of them are like compendiums of title pages from the early 1600s or that kind of thing. And just the art of the book and the history of book publishing really appeals to a lot of collectors. So in answer to your question, I want to say 1860s and previous are more expensive and harder to find than 1870s and up.
That's about what I've seen as well.
Yeah.
In the research that I've done, and the states we handle, we've had great early books that are worth nothing, and boring newer books that are worth a lot. It just so much depends on, like I said, the printing, the binding, the quality, the condition. That's another thing that people don't realize, is that just because something is old doesn't mean it's worth a lot of money. If the condition's rough, if the condition's rough.
Things can be repaired, but it takes schooling to learn that it's a science of repairing books correctly. And I've seen many people try to rebind book because the cover fell off, and I've tried myself, and you need special glue, you need special tape, it ends up looking terrible, and it's almost better to just leave it broken on your shelf.
Yeah.
But, condition is a huge one. If there's water stains, I mean, there's always age spots on old pieces of paper. That doesn't really devalue the book too much, but if there's stains or there's like sort of weathering away, some people like really weathered looking books and antiques like that, obviously, because it shows the age. But a lot of people, if they're looking for something they want to read, they want it to look, beautiful. And that's why Folio Society and Heritage Press make, these beautiful books that look old, but they're newly bound, and people collect those. And I don't collect them because I don't find them real, but some people do, because they just love the beauty of the book, and you can't find books printed that way. It's just not the style, and it's not, people don't think it's worth the money, and it's just not publishers like thing right now. But it's funny because as a librarian, I know they go through phases of what's popular, and right now a lot of popular book covers are, and someone made a meme about this, the imagery is like a woman's back turned, and like she has like an umbrella against like Paris or something, and it's just like, that was a bestseller and no one knew who that author was, so they're thinking, oh, like, let's make a similar cover, and then and so there was like a meme of like 20 different covers with that on it. And so it's kind of funny because you find the same thing in the 1800s, you find the marbling and the end papers, and you find the books sort of look the same, but they're so much more beautiful than, white cover books was a big one. Like a couple of years back, it was like white covers were everywhere, and kind of what's trendy. And it's funny knowing what's trendy in the 1800s and appreciating it now.
Yeah, everything has always been about what's popular visually as much as what's popular literarily. Is that a word? Did I say that right?
Yeah, literally, yeah.
I just threw that out there. As I was saying, I was like, I think that's a word.
It is.
But yeah, I mean, the tastes and styles and trends of every generation show up in everything that we consume, and books is no different.
I love old sets, because people don't know, but like the first editions of, for instance, a lot of Charles Dickens works came out serialized. So you would have an entire set that was Oliver Twist, but it was broken up into serial books, or only published later once it was compiled together, because it came out in magazines. And so real first editions, like real first printings, a lot of times were in like old magazines, and I blame Joanna. But yeah, no, I know the whole turning the books where you can't see the spine thing. I see that a lot.
I think that was as much. I was going to mention that. It's funny that Sue did. I think that was as much for copyright.
Oh, interesting. That makes a lot of sense then. Yeah.
Right, because on TV you'd see that, but in some magazines you would, but nobody would ever do that in their house.
No, you wouldn't be able to find the book. Although I will say, I don't organize my books, and people are always phenomenally shocked by that, because I'm a librarian, and you would think, so I need to learn how to do that for my store, and decide like, oh, and not everything's just crazy and you look at everything. Like, people are looking for exact genres.
Right. Thanks, Steve, for watching so much. It's good to have
a
real bibliophile. Stephen has show Bucks on the Shelf. Is that right? He does a show on books and collecting.
I've been on his show a couple times, and he's a guru. So I've learned a lot from him.
Yeah, he's a moderator of one of the book clubs here on Facebook that I actually met and learned about Colleen, because she posted there about her new bookstore.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. And yeah, if you're interested in the catalog, just reach out however you can find me, and I will send it along, and you can see some of my unlisted stuff, which is really exciting.
Yeah, if you want Colleen's this catalog, you can email her nootherbooklikethis@gmail.com. I almost said us again. I don't know why that's coming into my head.
You should copyright that, so then we can have like a.
You can have it. I'm not going to do anything with it. I've tried to copyright things before, and I've had these great ideas, and 8 years later, I'm like, oh, that's still there. I haven't done a thing with it. So you can run with that, Colleen, if you want to. And her website is nootherbooklikethis.com. It's really fun. She has some great pieces. So I'm curious, how big of an inventory do you have?
So the online, because it takes so long to list and take these beautiful pictures and try and like do the research, price it out, I haven't had time to really build up the website as much as I have easily done it on Instagram, where I can just take the book, take a couple pictures, put it on Instagram and say, message me for price, or here's the price, did the research. Putting it on the website is actually very time consuming. And so I'm excited because in between customers now, once I open the bookstore, I'll be able to do that and list so much more on the website. So that is not a representation of how many books I have. I think I have 10 bookshelves in my 1-bedroom apartment, and I'm moving into a double the size apartment near Groton, and I'm worried that I'm just going to grow my own personal collection because I'll have more space. But this place is like a library in itself. I want to say I have, for my own collection, I have easily over 1,500. And I want to say I have about that for sale. So, maybe 1,000 for sale I'm putting in the catalog, that I'm trying to do deals with, that I list online, and that I try to get on the website. But it's going to be much easier to sell when I physically have a place people can go visit and see them.
Absolutely. Now, opening up a brick and mortar right now, I mean, we've been told for years that nobody likes books. Paper is dying. Nobody's going to stores. Everybody's buying on their Kindle, on their phone, on their iPads. What kinds of things are you seeing that let you think that you can do this and make a profit at it? Because at the end of the day, if you don't make a profit at it, it's no fun. And then what things are you going to do to kind of hopefully grow that? Because at 30 years old, if this works, you're going to it could be a really great. I'm excited for you because you're starting this so young. And Stephen is right. Space can never have enough space.
Exactly.
Yeah, you cannot shrink a book. It's the size of the book.
And there's a big storage room too. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to fill that really quick at this store. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I'm finding with my buyers, a lot of it's gifts. A lot of times you're buying for someone else, or, you have some extra money. I sell very well in December and like around the holidays because people are giving gifts, but they're also, getting money, and they're like, oh, I want to buy myself a present. And people that are interested in books, I mean, it's the same thing as libraries. People think, oh, it's all computers now, it's all Kindle. And they do serve that purpose. Libraries have online ebooks that you can get with your card for free and that kind of thing, Audible, all that kind of stuff. But people still like physical books, and that might be shocking to a lot of people, but there's something lasting about it. And in fact, the lastingness of books is what really makes them special. And so selling used books, there's a big difference between selling people's donated books that they just trying to get rid of, that they bought 5 years ago, and you're getting them for free and you're putting them out there for $5, and that's not really what my plan is going to be. I'm going to be selling quality books over quantity, and it's going to be a real adventure sourcing en masse instead of looking for those gems that I can spend the time listing. And I'm going to have a place to put them, so that'll be good. And it's just something about, it's the same way with antiques, as I'm sure you know. If people like modern art, but some people really love oil paintings. I mean, I love oil paintings from certain time periods and certain artists and that kind of thing. So it just resonates with people, either the author or something special about the craft of the book, because it is an object at the same time.
Right. What's the most popular genre of book that you sell?
So for me, I sell what I collect a lot of times. So what's popular is illustrated books, illustrated classics, first editions and early editions, marbling on the details where you have like the corners that are leather bound, or you have marbling is, do I have one? I don't know. Yeah, I don't have one right next to me, but it's the certain kind of end papers are the papers that are in the beginning of the book and the end of the book. They're pasted. And then usually in newer books, they are just white, but they used to be beautifully designed in different like swirling marble looking colors, and people's covers of certain books would be that way too. And so people really love the pattern and love the visual of the book. So those are my best sellers if they have some kind of like, I have one huge edition of Shakespeare, and it's illustrated all throughout. It's from the 1800s. It's got all the pinpoints of what makes these books collectible. And so a lot of times I'm not selling to people that are looking to resell books or, just read it and throw it away kind of thing. It's a book they've already read and love, or it's a book they're intrigued by. And so I have this idea. I've never done TikTok before, but I know that that's like the new thing for Gen Z. And I'm still a millennial, but
You're just barely a millennial at 30, aren't you?
Yeah, yep, right in the middle, right in 1990. But I was thinking of doing something where you take a book and it's an author you don't know. Like, there's one that wrote my favorite fairy tale, and she wrote a lot of poetry and some books. Dinah Maria Mullock Craik. She's got a very odd name, very obscure, and fairy tales do very well actually too. Children's books that are illustrated, like back in the day, were really intense books. Like they weren't like picture books as much. They were like actually written novels kind of for you to read to your child, and those sell very well too. But I'm thinking on TikTok I might do first pages with no other book like this, and if it's a book I think people don't know about, or an author I think people don't know about, but it's beautiful and I want to sell it, I could read that first paragraph and do like a video of me reading the first paragraph and be like, if you're intrigued by this book now, message me to buy it. And I think a lot of people do that. They open up the first page, they go through the illustrations, and they go, you know what, let me take a chance on this book. And I love that.
What's your average price point?
So I want to say it can be pretty steep. I want to say 60 per book. And it's going to have to come a lot down. And so there are books that, just sit there. And so I'm learning that too, which ones will move in the store. I'm getting a sense of that. And titles, people go for titles too. Even if it's not, like, people will buy paperbacks if it's Mark Twain and they just really love Huckleberry Finn and they have like 10 editions, and then they find a paperback that they don't have that edition, they'll buy that. And so I will have to sort of alter my whole looking for the gems in the mass and try and get quality books in bulk. So it's going to be an interesting foray that I have not done, but I get a lot of books that are worth hundreds of dollars that I'll get for like $5.
Books is still a segment of the antique and vintage and estate population or marketplace that you can still walk up on good books for little money. And if it's books that are pre-barcode, it's much easier because the booksellers hitting estate sales with their readers on their phone, just scanning barcodes to see, is it a $2 book or a $20 book?
Exactly. It's a different selling. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a different type of selling. But if you kind of understand the antique market and more of like pre-1960, 1970, like you talked about paperbacks a couple of times, we sold a collection of science fiction first edition paperbacks.
Science fiction is huge for paperbacks. And that's what I like to call pulp. Pulp paperbacks, pocket paperbacks, those are the ones that move, and they're really fun, and they have gorgeous art on them. It's really stylistic versus, the glossy sort of like romance novels.
And it brought, this is years ago, and it brought thousands and thousands of dollars cumulatively. And I know the estate that it came from, they were destined for the trash.
Oh
Because
yeah, and if
who wants
you
old
know
paperbacks?
like if you know big authors in each genre, which I've learned over the years, a lot of this just takes practice and going out to these stores and seeing, it's really hard to find Anna Karenina. I wonder why. And oh, it's really hard to find like a first edition Kafka. I wonder why. And you're sort of like guessing and realizing what people really collect versus what they read modern. Like I said, I read 3 books at once, and I do read modern books, but I do love those old fairy tales and the old collections of classic literature and that kind of stuff. So that's my sort of like expertise area. And I'm gonna have to fill every genre. I did take a science fiction and fantasy class at UConn that I will never forget because I learned all these authors that I like fell in love with. And science fiction is a huge market. It's absolutely, it's a huge market, and then it's really easy to get really cheap science fiction books. But then you get the big names and you get the cool sort of like editions. Like I have a first edition of an Edgar Rice Burroughs, I think, story that was in a science fiction sort of like pulp paperback, and that was the first time it was printed. And so you're looking at first printings versus first publishing editions and that kind of stuff, and some people are really into that and they want the first one that ever came out.
Absolutely. And with the store, you're gonna have to have some sporting type books. You're gonna have
I'm gonna have to learn so many genres. Like I just inherited a bunch of books from my aunt's great aunt who passed away, and a lot of dog books, and those are big in certain groups.
Absolutely.
And it's just kind of funny because she had a lot of whaling books, and I was like, that's kind of not in vogue anymore, and who's gonna buy whaling books because it's all save the whales. I'm for Save the Whales as well. And there was a huge market for that at some point, and now it's sort of dried up a little bit.
Has that market, because I know maritime art is still pretty popular.
Hunting for whales, I think specifically, is like a little taboo. But yeah, fishing books, absolutely, sailing books, maritime is the perfect word for that. Those go really well in New England, I feel like, on the coast. People love the history of that.
Yeah, and with being a destination, you want to appeal to the men and women in the couples if they're a general type couple. Well, Colleen, I think we've covered a lot today.
Yeah.
We've had a great time. Let me just do this real quick. I want to thank everybody for watching. Sue, Linda, Steve, everybody else. You've been watching Behind the Gavel with Jason. We do this every Friday. Next week, I have Hadley Keller, who is the publisher of House Beautiful. She's in charge of she's like about the same age as Colleen, maybe a year or two older. And we're going to talk about the millennials in the marketplace of antiques and vintage. So I'm really excited about that. If you have questions for Colleen or myself, you can always ask them below, but you can also drop me an email at info@kcauctioncompany.com or give us a phone call at 816-283-3633. And of course, KCAuctionCompany.com. KC Auction Company is who sponsors this because that's my company and I sponsor my own businesses. So again, thank you all so much for watching and joining us today. Colleen, I like to give my guests the last word. We've talked a lot about, I've had some areas we've taken the conversation. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about your business, about books, or anything else in general that you'd like to have just a couple of minutes and tell our viewers kind of anything you want to in relation to what you've been talking about today?
I guess I would say social media has become my lifeline with selling books as a hobby, because I don't have time during the day. Now I will have time, which is so exciting to list everything. But there is a huge network of people, they call them bookstagrams. And there's a huge network of people that just love old books, posting pictures of old books, posting pictures of new books. This is just what they're reading, book recommendations. And I've met some of my best friends through sales, looking for something for them and then sending it to them. And packaging is huge for shipping and that kind of thing. And so I'm really excited for having a physical place for all these books and not just sending them out, because I'll be able to serve the public like I do as a librarian, but in a more face-to-face way, and continue those online networking sort of things. So anyone that, like, currently the bookstore I'm going to sort of purchase or the assets from doesn't even have a website. And so I just think if you're looking for books and you're having trouble because you only have Google or eBay, look on social media for these experts. Not to call myself an expert, but like these people that know where to look and know how to find what you're looking for, because it's a lot easier than you think to get in touch with these people. Everyone's very open in the Bookstagram community to connection.
Bookstagram, I like it a lot.
I like it too, yeah.
And Sue says it's all about the TikTok. It's all about the hashtag on TikTok.
Yup, and I'm getting ready for my foray into TikTok. I'm excited for that too.
And then Bookstagram, and Sue says, wasn't sure what I heard. Yeah, it's Bookstagram, and I've seen that hashtag there before too. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and what's funny is almost everything has that hashtag, whether it's dogs of Instagram or.
Hashtags are huge, and that's how you get found. So sometimes it's hard because I'll have to hashtag like a certain author, and then you'll hashtag like a quote from, I'll say a quote from the book that I'm selling, and I'll have to do like literary quotes from authors, like hashtag this, hashtag that, and you can only use 30 hashtags, so you have to be very careful which ones you use and try and use the most popular ones, and then people sort of find your page, see what you're doing, and it's free marketing. It just takes work.
Yeah. So I'm assuming no other book like this can be found everywhere.
Okay, no, only because I would have to use it on every single post. So if you look at no other book like this, you'll find every post I've ever done. If you go to my profile at no other book like this, but if you do hashtag no other book like this, only a couple of my posts come up because I like to use what is found better, and you would already have to know about me to use that hashtag. So.
All righty then. Well, Bookstagram I know is on all your posts.
Yes, absolutely.
And others like that. Colleen, thank you so much for joining me. Good luck on your ventures going forward. I'm so excited to hear young people in the business. I'm 20 years older than you, and I don't feel like it most days, but I was once in my 20s in this business as well, and I understand how daunting it can be, how challenging it can be, how the old timers don't give you a second chance until they get to know you.
Yeah. So they have so much wisdom, though. It's like I've learned so much from the nice ones and the people that do give me the time of day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy for you, excited for you. Hope it does well. If I'm in Connecticut, I'm definitely going to stop by your store.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll send you an invite to the grand opening in September.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Okay. Thank you so much, Colleen. Have a great afternoon. Have a great weekend. We'll see everybody else watching next Friday when I talk to Hadley Keller. Otherwise,
I'll be watching.
Have any questions, let us know, and have a great weekend.